I watched her drown, and I didn't save her. The words hung in the air like a suffocating fog. For years, I told myself I could never forgive her. I convinced myself that she didn't deserve to breathe the same air I did. But standing here now, just a few feet away from her, everything I had buried deep inside me came rushing back: anger, betrayal, and the cold realization that I had made the biggest mistake of my life. Emily. My first love. The one who swore she would never leave. The girl who promised me forever, only to vanish without a trace. I didn't know it then, but her disappearance was the first betrayal. It was the beginning of a series of lies so intricate that I had no idea what was real anymore. It was 7 years ago that I stood on that bridge, staring into the dark waters below. She was crying, pleading for me to believe her, telling me that she hadn't meant to hurt me, that she still loved me. But the way she looked at me, like she was already mourning the man I used to be, changed everything. I had loved her with all my heart, and in return, she had crushed me with the most elaborate lie I'd ever heard. The betrayal I felt when she disappeared was unimaginable. But what happened after she left? That was the real nightmare. Now, after years of trying to move on, she had the nerve to call me. To ask for a second chance. The audacity. The nerve. But worse. I had been waiting for this moment for far too long, and I wasn't sure if I could walk away again. She wasn't here to apologize. She was here for something much darker. And this time, I wasn't going to be the one who got burned. It's funny how time works. The longer you try to forget someone, the clearer their face becomes in your memory. I hadn't seen Emily in 7 years, but when I closed my eyes, I could still see the way her eyes sparkled in the sunlight, the way her laugh echoed through my chest, the way she touched my arm when she thought no one was watching. It felt like yesterday when we were inseparable, two souls destined to be together. We were kids, really. Just 18, fresh out of high school, with nothing but the future in front of us. Our love was the kind that everyone dreams of, one of those perfect stories where everything just clicked. I had always been the quiet, reserved one, content with my books and my small circle of friends. She, on the other hand, was everything I wasn't: spontaneous, confident, and always surrounded by people. I admired her, more than she probably knew. I never imagined she would fall for someone like me, someone who kept his emotions locked away. But she did. And for a time, it felt like I was living a dream. Emily didn't just sweep me off my feet. She built me up, made me feel like I was capable of anything. I trusted her with everything I had. My secrets, my fears, my hopes for the future, I gave them all to her. And she gave me hers. It was perfect, the kind of love that everyone around us envied. People would look at us and say, "They're going to make it," as if it was already decided. But the cracks started showing long before she disappeared. I just couldn't see them, blinded by how much I wanted to believe in her, in us. Emily had this way of making everything seem effortless, but the longer we were together, the more I realized she was hiding things she didn't want me to see. Little lies at first, about where she had been, who she had been with. And every time I questioned her, she had an answer. A convincing answer. But there was always something in her eyes, a flash of something I couldn't place. I didn't want to believe it, but the feeling gnawed at me, deep in my gut. It wasn't until the night she left that everything finally came into focus. She had been distant for weeks, pulling away slowly until I felt like I was chasing a ghost. The night she told me she was leaving, I didn't know what hit me. I remember standing there, in our apartment, as she packed her things. She said she needed space, that she wasn't sure about us anymore. I begged her not to go, but she wouldn't listen. It wasn't just that she was leaving, it was the way she said it, like it was already decided, like she had been planning it for months. And then, the words she said to me that night, I'll never forget them. "I can't keep pretending, Luke. I don't love you anymore." I wanted to scream, to throw something at her, but I didn't. I just stood there, numb. It was like the world had fallen away, and nothing made sense anymore. How could she say that? After everything we had been through? How could she just throw it all away? And then, she was gone. Without a trace. Just like that. For weeks, I searched for her, trying to understand what had happened. She left behind everything, her clothes, her personal belongings, even her phone. It was like she had evaporated into thin air. No one had seen her, no one knew where she had gone. The police couldn't do anything, and after a while, I just gave up. I had to. It was either that or lose my mind. I moved on, or at least, I tried to. But no matter how many years passed, the bitterness never faded. Every time I thought I was free, I would catch myself wondering about her, what she was doing, if she was happy. Sometimes, I would see someone who looked like her on the street, and my heart would race before I remembered that it wasn't her. It was like I was always waiting for her to come back, to give me an explanation. But deep down, I knew the truth, I would never get one. And then, last week, my phone buzzed. I was sitting in my apartment, staring blankly at the wall, when the message came through. It was her. Emily. The number was blocked, but I recognized the name. The message was simple. Can we talk? I couldn't believe it. After all these years, after everything she had put me through, she was reaching out to me again. I felt like the ground had shifted beneath me, like I was back at square one. The anger flared up immediately. How dare she? After everything, she thought she could just waltz back into my life. But then I remembered something. Something I had buried deep inside. I wasn't the same person I had been back then. I had changed. I had learned from the pain, from the betrayal. And for the first time, I realized that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't about reconciliation. This was about something much darker. Something I hadn't been ready for then, but I was now. I hadn't thought about that night in years. The night Emily left. I tried to convince myself it was a simple breakup, one of those things that just happens in life, but now, standing in front of her again, everything came rushing back. I had built my life around the lie I told myself, that I was better off without her. But the truth? The truth was far worse than I had ever imagined. It was the night we met at the coffee shop, the first time I saw her after she disappeared. I couldn't help but notice how different she seemed, colder, more calculating. The warmth that had once been in her eyes was gone, replaced by something I couldn't quite place. I was desperate to know why she was back, what she wanted from me. My heart was in my throat as I waited for her to speak, her words hanging in the air like a knife poised to strike. "I'm not here to ask for forgiveness, Luke," she said, her voice steady but laced with something unfamiliar. "I'm here because there's something you need to know. Something you've been kept in the dark about for a long time." I didn't know what to think. My mind raced. Had she finally come to apologize? Was this her attempt to explain? But the words that followed shattered every illusion I had built up over the years. "You think I left because I didn't love you," she continued, her eyes locked onto mine. "But that's not the truth, Luke. I left because I had to. You were never meant to be a part of my plan." Her words hit me like a sucker punch. I took a step back, trying to process what she was saying. "What do you mean? What plan?" She took a deep breath, her gaze shifting to the floor. "You were just a pawn in a much bigger game. I never loved you the way you thought I did. Everything between us, every moment we shared, was part of a larger scheme." I felt my heart stop. A pawn? A scheme? The words made no sense. "What are you talking about, Emily?" She hesitated, then finally met my eyes again, her expression hardening. "You weren't the only one I was involved with. There was someone else, someone much more important than you. And when I had to make a choice between you and him, I chose him." I wanted to scream at her, to demand answers, but the words were stuck in my throat. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. All these years, I had lived with the belief that Emily had left because she didn't love me anymore, that maybe something had just changed between us. But the truth was far more insidious. Who was he? I managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. Emily's eyes flickered with a moment of hesitation before she spoke again. His name is Michael. He's the reason I left, the reason I disappeared. He was always the one I was supposed to be with. Michael. I didn't know who he was, but the name sent a chill down my spine. My mind spun as I tried to wrap my head around her words. She hadn't left me for someone else, she had left me for a purpose. A plan that I had never been a part of, something I was too blind to see. But why? I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop myself. Why me? Why pretend to love me if you had no intentions of staying? Emily let out a sigh, and for a moment, it seemed like the walls between us came crashing down. She looked vulnerable, almost like the girl I once knew, but then she steeled herself again, as if the weight of the truth was too much to bear. Because you were perfect, she said, her voice quiet, almost regretful. I needed someone who would believe in me, who would think I was worth fighting for. You were too trusting, too innocent. I manipulated you without even realizing it, and I hated myself for it. But it had to be done, Luke. It was the only way I could get what I needed. The words left me breathless. I could barely process what she was saying. Had it all been a lie? Was the love we shared just a means to an end for her? I had spent years replaying our relationship, wondering what had gone wrong, but never once had I considered that I was just a pawn in some twisted game. But Emily wasn't done. The truth is, I never really left. Not in the way you think. Michael and I were always in contact, even after I disappeared. He was the one who got me out of town, who helped me start over. But that night, when you thought I had abandoned you, that's when things went wrong. My heart pounded as she continued, revealing a piece of the puzzle that had been missing for so long. I had to make sure you never found out the truth, Luke. I had to make sure you never came looking for me. Because if you did, Michael's plan would have been ruined. And he couldn't afford that. I was reeling, unable to make sense of it all. The lies, the betrayal, it felt like the ground beneath me had collapsed. But then, Emily dropped the final bombshell. The accident, she said, her voice barely audible. It wasn't an accident. The air in the room seemed to freeze. I could barely breathe as I processed her words. What accident? What was she talking about? What do you mean? I whispered, my pulse racing. The night I left, Michael was the one who made sure you wouldn't find me. He was the one who set it all up. He made sure you thought I was gone for good. He was the one who made it look like I had drowned. The room felt like it was spinning. I wanted to scream, to throw something, but all I could do was stare at Emily, trying to make sense of the twisted truth she had just exposed. You don't understand, she continued, her voice tinged with desperation. I didn't want any of this. I didn't want to hurt you, but I had no choice. Michael was too powerful. He was the only way I could escape. Escape? Escape from what? From me? From us? The words blurred together, and I couldn't breathe. The first betrayal wasn't her leaving me, it was everything that had happened after. The truth hit me like a freight train, and suddenly, the past 7 years of my life felt like a lie. I couldn't breathe. The air in the room felt too thick, suffocating, and the walls seemed to close in on me with every word that left Emily's lips. She'd just told me she hadn't disappeared by choice, that everything I thought I knew about her, about us, was a carefully orchestrated lie. But I wasn't ready for the next twist. You're not the only one in the dark, Luke, she said, her voice quiet, almost regretful. There's something I never told you, something I should have. And now, I need your help. I blinked, confused and disoriented. Help? What could you possibly need from me? Her gaze flickered to the side, as though she were choosing her words carefully. She took a deep breath, like she was bracing herself for something even worse. Michael, he's dangerous, Luke. He's not who you think he is. He's not just some rich guy I got involved with. He's part of something much darker than you can imagine. My stomach twisted. This wasn't what I had expected. I had always pictured her as the victim in this twisted game, the one who had been manipulated by someone more powerful than her. But now, she was asking for my help. Was I supposed to just ignore everything she'd done? How could I? You're telling me this now? I spat out, the bitterness rising in my throat. After everything you've done? After you left me for dead, after he made sure I would never find you, and now you expect me to help you? Emily flinched, but she didn't back down. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, Luke, and I'm not asking for it. But I need you to listen. I didn't just betray you, I betrayed myself. I thought I could handle everything, that I could manipulate the situation, control the outcome, but I was wrong. Michael is controlling everything now. And I'm not just talking about me. He's controlling you, too. The words hit me like a slap to the face. I felt my chest tighten, my head pounding. What do you mean, he's controlling me? I demanded, my voice trembling with a mix of confusion and anger. I haven't had anything to do with Michael. I haven't even seen him in years. Emily shook her head slowly. You have, Luke. All along. It wasn't just my disappearance. It was everything, your job, your career, the relationships you've had since then. Michael has been pulling the strings, quietly, subtly, in the background. He's been watching you, using you for his own gain. You've been living a lie, just like me. I took a step back, the ground beneath me suddenly feeling unsteady. Was she saying that my entire life, the one I had rebuilt after she left, had been manipulated by this man? Everything I had worked for, everything I had built. Was it all part of some grand plan? No, I said, my voice shaky, barely a whisper. No. You're wrong. I've worked hard for everything I have. You can't just. I'm not wrong, Luke, she cut in sharply. I've seen it. I've seen how he operates. He's been infiltrating every part of your life. Your success. That's him. Your failures. Those, too. He's been orchestrating everything from behind the scenes. You thought you were free, but Michael's hand has been on you the entire time. The words were too much. My head was spinning. I couldn't process it. What? What do you want from me? Why are you telling me all this now? I could feel the frustration rising, mixing with the anger and the confusion. What am I supposed to do with this information, Emily? You've spent 7 years lying to me, and now you expect me to help you fix things. Her eyes softened then, and for the briefest moment, I saw something in her that almost made me feel sorry for her. But it quickly passed. I need you to help me take him down. He's too dangerous now, too powerful. He's not just some businessman anymore, he's connected to people who will destroy everything you care about if you stand in his way. And right now, you're in his way, whether you know it or not. I shook my head, my mind racing. How could I possibly believe her? How could I trust anything she said after all these years? But then I thought about it, the way my life had seemed to go off course after she left. The failed relationships, the career moves that hadn't panned out the way I'd hoped. The subtle sense that something was always just out of reach. I had assumed it was just bad luck. Now, I wasn't so sure. You think I can just walk into Michael's world and take him down? I asked incredulously. You think I can just ignore everything you've done and help you undo your mistakes? You're insane. Emily's face darkened, and I saw a flicker of something dangerous in her eyes. You don't have a choice, Luke, she said, her voice low and menacing. If you don't help me, you'll lose everything you care about. Everything. The weight of her words hit me like a freight train. Suddenly, I wasn't sure where the threat was coming from. Was it from her? From Michael? Or was it something deeper, something darker than I could see? She leaned in closer, her eyes boring into mine. I've been trying to fix this for years, Luke. But now it's too late. Michael knows what you are to me. He knows what you mean to me. And he won't stop until you're out of the picture for good. I didn't know how to respond. The anger was still bubbling inside me, but the fear, the confusion, it was starting to consume me. I couldn't let this happen again. I couldn't let Emily drag me into her world of lies and manipulation again. But there was something in her words that gnawed at me, something about Michael, about how he had been watching me all along. I stepped back, my hands trembling. I need time to think about this. Emily nodded, the tension in her posture telling me that she knew exactly how much time I had. You don't have much. He's already made his move. And if you're not careful, you'll be the next target. The room was heavy with silence as she turned and walked toward the door. But before she left, she glanced back at me. You'll do the right thing, Luke. You always do. And with that, she was gone. I stood there in the silence, my mind racing. What the hell had just happened? How had I gotten sucked into this again? Emily's betrayal, Michael's manipulation, was this the end of the nightmare, or just the beginning? The next few days felt like a whirlwind. I couldn't focus on anything. Not my work. Not the apartment I had spent years making my sanctuary. Not the friends who had drifted away from me over the years, not even the small comforts of my daily life. It was all consumed by one thought, Emily. And Michael. Their betrayal. The twisted game they had played with my life. I couldn't let this go. I couldn't walk away again and pretend I wasn't caught in the same trap they had set years ago. Emily might have left me for dead once, but this time, I was going to make sure she and Michael would never play with me again. I didn't know exactly where to begin, but one thing was clear, I needed to get to Michael. Emily had warned me that he was powerful, that he had been pulling strings behind the scenes, using me without my knowledge. But what was the one thing I knew about Michael? He had underestimated me. He thought I was weak. But I wasn't the naive kid I had been 7 years ago. I had changed. And I was going to use everything I had learned to take him down. The first part of any revenge is understanding your enemy. Michael's network was vast. Emily hadn't just been involved with him, she had been a cog in a much larger machine. I didn't know exactly what he was into, but I knew one thing, power. He had power over Emily, over me, over people I had never met. And I needed to figure out how he operated. I started with the basics. I pulled out my old connections, the ones I had neglected in the years since Emily left. It wasn't easy. The people I knew were either gone or had moved on to their own lives. But there was one person I could still trust. A private investigator I had hired once before for a different case, an old acquaintance of mine. His name was Rick, and he owed me a favor. Rick was sharp, methodical, and had a network of his own. I met him in a dive bar downtown, quiet, out of the way. The kind of place where you could talk without being overheard. Luke, he greeted me with a nod, his eyes scanning the room, always aware of his surroundings. What's this about? You don't usually come to me for personal stuff. I slid a napkin across the table toward him, the words, Michael Hayes, scribbled hastily in my handwriting. I need everything on him, I said, leaning forward. His background, his businesses, the people he's involved with, the places he goes. Everything. Rick raised an eyebrow, but didn't ask questions. Are you sure about this? I nodded, my jaw tight. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Over the next few days, Rick did what he was best at. He dug up everything he could on Michael Hayes, his criminal connections, his secret business dealings, the hidden wealth he had amassed over the years. Michael wasn't just a businessman, he was connected to some very dangerous people. The deeper I got into the information Rick gathered, the more I realized just how far Michael's reach extended. He wasn't just pulling the strings on my life, he was manipulating an entire web of people for his own gain. And then, Rick handed me something that made my blood run cold, Michael's plan to bring me down. The final piece of the puzzle. He had been watching me all along, orchestrating my career moves, my relationships, everything. The truth hit me like a freight train, Michael's plot was never about Emily. It was about me, about breaking me down and making me a pawn in his game. But now, I had the upper hand. The next part of the plan was simple. Get Michael to trust me again. I knew that Emily had left me for a reason, Michael had made sure of that. But if I could make him believe I was still his ally, still under his control, I could get close enough to strike. I wasn't playing by his rules anymore. I was playing on my own. I knew Michael's habits. His vanity. His arrogance. He believed everyone would fall in line if he played his cards right. I had to use that against him. I began by contacting some of Michael's closest associates, people who had worked with him for years. I reached out to them, offering information that would make their lives easier, small favors, inside information on rival businesses, things they would find useful. Slowly, I built up trust, presenting myself as someone who could be a valuable ally to Michael, someone who could help him take down his enemies. The key was to never push too hard, to never seem desperate. Michael didn't need to know that I was playing the long game. He just needed to believe that I was on his side. Over the course of several weeks, I began to work my way into his inner circle. I attended the same high-profile events, met with the same business partners, and slowly infiltrated his operations. Michael loved to surround himself with people who admired him, who were eager to be part of his empire. It didn't take long for me to fit in. But I wasn't here to make friends. I was here to destroy everything Michael had built. As much as I hated myself for it, there was one final element of my revenge that I couldn't avoid, Emily. I had to get close to her again. I had to use her to bring Michael down. It wasn't easy. After everything, I had sworn I'd never let her back into my life. But I knew that Emily was the key to bringing Michael to his knees. I didn't have the luxury of being sentimental anymore. If I wanted revenge, I had to use everything at my disposal. I called her. She didn't hesitate. She met me at the same coffee shop we had sat in all those years ago. The memories flooded back, the good and the bad, but I kept my face impassive, cold. She was playing me again, I could see it in her eyes. She wasn't here to apologize, she was here to use me. Michael's been pulling the strings on everything, hasn't he? I asked, leaning forward, keeping my voice calm. Everything that's happened, the way you've destroyed my life. I know it wasn't just you. Her eyes flickered. She didn't know whether to lie or tell the truth, and I could see it in the way her face tightened. I never wanted any of this, Luke. You have to believe me. I don't, I said flatly. I know you're still in contact with him. I know you're still playing both sides. You've been manipulating me again, just like you did before. She flinched. Her face flushed with guilt and something else, fear, maybe. But I didn't care. I wasn't here to feel sorry for her. What do you want from me? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. You're going to help me take him down, I said coldly. You and Michael have made my life a living hell. Now, it's time for me to return the favor. Everything had led to this moment. I had manipulated Michael into thinking I was still one of his loyal followers, gained his trust, infiltrated his world. I had used Emily to get the final pieces of the puzzle. Now it was time to destroy him. The final move was set into motion. I had everything, evidence of Michael's crimes, his dealings with dangerous people, his financial schemes. I had gathered it all, and it was going to be his downfall. The final act would take place in the most public way possible, a charity gala he had been planning for months. It would be the perfect stage for the world to see just who Michael Hayes really was. I contacted the authorities and ensured they would be waiting for him. As the gala unfolded, I watched from the sidelines, feeling a surge of satisfaction rise within me. The moment arrived when Michael realized the walls were closing in. The police arrived, his associates turned on him, and his carefully crafted empire began to crumble. It was a beautiful sight. But Emily? Emily stood there, frozen. She wasn't part of the plan. She wasn't supposed to be caught in the crossfire. I looked at her one last time. For a moment, I wondered if there was anything left of the girl I had once loved. But the truth was, I didn't care anymore. She had made her choices. And I had made mine. The end was inevitable. And in the end, I realized that my revenge wasn't about Emily. It was about me. About taking back control, about not being a pawn in someone else's game. As Michael was arrested and taken away, I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No relief. Just emptiness. But there was one thing I knew for sure, I was free. The world around me had gone silent. The flashing lights of the police cars outside the gala, the muffled murmurs of people still in shock at what had just unfolded, all of it faded into the background as I stood there, watching Michael Hayes, the man who had spent years manipulating me, being taken away in handcuffs. His empire was collapsing, his connections unraveling, and for the first time in 7 years, I felt the weight on my chest lighten. It was over. The revenge I had meticulously planned, executed with precision, had come to fruition. But as Michael was loaded into the back of a police car, I felt no rush of triumph. No sense of justice. Just a profound emptiness, a hollow pit where the anger and hurt used to be. Revenge, I realized, had never been about making them pay. It had been about making me feel something again, anything. And now that the deed was done, I felt nothing. I turned away from the scene, walking through the marble halls of the gala, my footsteps echoing in the empty space. The crowd had begun to thin, the shock still hanging in the air. But none of them mattered. No one in that room would ever know the true cost of what had just happened. Not the months of planning, the manipulation, the lies. Not the years of my life that had been sacrificed for a single moment of vengeance. I stood in front of the mirror in the back room, staring at my reflection. Who was I now? A man who had given everything for revenge. A man who had torn apart the life of someone he had once loved. My mind raced, but no answers came. Emily's face flashed in my mind, her tear-filled eyes begging for my forgiveness as the police carted Michael away. She had betrayed me too, and in a way, she had paid for it. She had been forced to confront the monster she had helped create. I had seen that much in her eyes, fear, regret, and a deep, empty guilt. But I wasn't interested in her anymore. Not in the way I once had been. Not now. As I walked out of the gala, the cool night air felt like a release. The weight of everything I had endured seemed to evaporate with each step. But as I reached my car, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a message. From an unknown number. This isn't over. Michael isn't the only one you need to worry about. You have no idea what you've just set in motion. I froze. My fingers hovered over the screen as my heart skipped a beat. The message was clear, the story wasn't over. Michael was just a small piece of a much larger puzzle. I had taken him down, but what about the people behind him? The ones who had supported his empire, the ones who were still out there, waiting? I thought I had won. But I hadn't. I had opened the door to something far worse. I stood there for a moment, staring at the phone in my hand, my heart pounding. It was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. As I drove home that night, the weight of everything I had done, everything I had lost, sank in. There was still so much left unfinished, so much left in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered. Michael had been just the beginning. The forces he had been working with, the people who had been using me from the very start, none of them had been dealt with yet. I had taken the first step in a long game, and now, I had no choice but to see it through. But I wasn't the only one with a stake in this. Emily was still out there, her connection to Michael was still a threat, and as much as I hated her for what she had done, I knew she wasn't going to let me walk away from this. Not when there were still answers to be found. Not when there were people pulling the strings, hidden in the darkness. The message I had received was only the beginning. The true enemies weren't just the ones I could see. They were the ones who operated in the shadows, the ones who would stop at nothing to get what they wanted. And as much as I wanted to walk away from it all, I knew that wasn't possible anymore. Michael had been a pawn in a much bigger game, and now I was a part of it. So, what happens now? For one, I'm not done with Michael's world. His downfall is just the first piece of a much darker puzzle. The question is, who's next? The shadows that loom over my past are not ready to let go, and neither am I. The enemies I've made are still out there, waiting. I've seen the ugliness that runs through this world, and now I know I'm deeper than ever before. Stay tuned. Because the real story is just beginning. If you think Michael's downfall was the end, think again. The story isn't over. In fact, it's only going to get darker from here. Want to know what happens next? Want to see the twisted depths I'll go to in order to destroy everything that once controlled me? Subscribe now, and don't miss the next chapter of this gripping, unpredictable saga. The vengeance, the betrayals, the lies, it's all still ahead. Don't miss out.